this? Talk.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay.
Good evening.
I am hearing a slight echo.
Good evening.
Hi, yes, okay. Okay, so since everybody can hear me, I'm just going to get right into today's discussion. But let me first thank all of you for joining this very important discussion this afternoon. As you are well aware, we are in the midst of the hurricane season, and I think it's important that we catch up to, in a sense, assess our preparedness as far as the constituency is concerned in the context of what is going on in the country. And let me just, from the beginning, just indicate that one, we are streaming on YouTube, and therefore I will be monitoring the comments on YouTube. For those of you joining the call on Zoom, the chat feature is available in case you want to ask any questions. And so also my WhatsApp is also available for persons to send messages through. And we will try to answer as many questions as possible in the time that we have. We have initially allocated between 5 and 6:30 to have this discussion in the context of how do we prepare for this year's hurricane season, which is clearly already demonstrated that it is much more active, given that we've already had 2 named storms in the Atlantic. And therefore, I wanted to take this opportunity this afternoon just to ensure that we can do some very simple things within the context of the constituency to ensure that that we can be as prepared as possible, whilst ensuring that from the government's perspective that we are able to also obviously respond to many of the challenges that certainly communities around the country have faced, but certainly areas like Wharton specifically, which we will get an update on this afternoon. As was communicated, this is a joint meeting certainly between myself and that of the District Emergency Organization for Christchurch East Central. And you will be getting an opportunity this afternoon to pose questions to either myself, the DEO is represented. I see members of the DEO on the call. The chairman is on the call, and I see some members on the call as well. And there will be an opportunity to have what I hope is a very lively and interactive discussion this afternoon, because it is important that we all try to build resilience within the community and in a sense leverage all of the skills that we have in the context of the constituency to be able to better respond to any specific hazards or disasters or any issues that may come up that would allow us to be in a position to do that. Let me just say at the outset that I know, and obviously it is hurricane season, and we always urge persons to be as prepared as possible. And as we speak right now, the water has been out for those areas serviced by Fort George. And in the context of the constituency, that represents Elizabeth Park, Regency Park, Sergeant's Village, Southview, South Ridge, St. David's, Vauxhall, Sheraton Park, and Sheraton Heights. And the Barbados Water Authority has been under pressure, as you know. I mean, as we sit where we are today, clearly outside has been overcast for the past few days, and we certainly welcome the rain because we have been experiencing a significant rare drought, which I think we all can put have seen. And therefore, it is important, even in that context, that we have been experiencing ongoing outages of water across Barbados. We have not necessarily had in the constituency compared to other parts of the country. We have not necessarily had it as bad as other parts, but it is critically important that, as I know, we've just given the Barbados Water Authority monies to help improve the water infrastructure, certainly in the eastern part of the country, in order to ease the pressure on the other parts of the network. It is important that, especially during the hurricane season, that all of us, we try to ensure that we manage our water resources and that we store as much water as we can, so that when an outage presents itself, that we are not as inconvenienced as possible. And the truth is that if we're able to do that consistently, especially during the hurricane season, then I think that can help to mitigate some of the discomfort, because we never know when the water may go for a whole host of reasons. And I hope and pray that we get enough rain this year, not to cause any flooding, not to necessarily cause any disruption, but we get enough rain that will help to replenish the aquifers across Barbados, so that a lot of the issues related to the drought that we have been facing can be minimized. And so this afternoon, we will receive specifically an update as it relates to the infrastructure works that commenced about, all told, probably about a year ago, or thereabouts, as it relates to helping to deal with some of the issues in the area of water, which we all know usually experiences some kind of flooding once there's significant rain. And therefore we set about a task of trying to ensure that the basic infrastructure in terms of the wells, the repairs, and the things that would need to be done, that can be done in as timely a manner as possible. We have seen some progress, and of course we would love to have seen some more progress, but I think the reality is that we have been able to address some of the issues. Whilst all has not yet been fully resolved, it is our intention to ensure that we can resolve those issues as quickly as possible. Now, it is forecast to be a much more active hurricane season this year. And certainly over the last couple of seasons, we have seen an increase in the number of Category 5 hurricanes passing across the Atlantic. And certainly last year in Bahamas was an example of all of the things that, whilst we felt lucky that Dorian had passed us and did not produce anything that in the end was of necessary concern to the country, we all saw what happened in the context of Bahamas. And it is critically important that we do some very basic things, and I want to break it down to its lowest common denominator, because if we all pitch in across the communities, and where we see drains outside our houses that are either blocked or the sidewalks have debris in them, I would ask everyone to play their part and to clear the drains and the debris that happens to be in front of their immediate space. And the truth is that if we do some of those basic things, such that whether it is grass that has blown or garbage that would have blown and blocked the drains, that these very simple things can prevent a whole lot of damage that can contribute to flooding and inconvenience if we can do some of the very basic things. Now, the government has committed to clearing the water courses across the country, which you've seen happening already. That will continue, but it is some of the localized issues that we have to be capable of responding to as communities, because at the end of the day, it is really our areas that will experience, certainly in the context of water and the flooding. But where there are trees that need to be trimmed, then let us collect that information, get it to the Light and Power. I know that that's a process that we would have started. And I know that we are in the midst of a pandemic, and we have been very focused on how we manage the public health side of that. But it is critically important now that as we have just passed and entered essentially the hurricane season, and we have been able to successfully contain the spread of COVID-19 to date, that we turn our focus on ensuring that over the course of the next few months, that we are mindful that we have to be as prepared as possible. That will mean different things for different people. I want to stress that we are always open. We are always open to your feedback, certainly in the context of how we can engage the residents across the constituency to, one, as I said, do the very basic things in your immediate area that can help ensure that we keep the drains and the wells and the covers and all of that, that we collect that information. We take the immediate action to keep those things clear, and pass on any specific information by way of requests for repairs to my office, so that we can get them onto the radar of the various ministries, whether it is Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance, or the Ministry of the Environment, so that we can get these things repaired. We have started a process very quickly, and then I know the DEO has been busy on this, but we've started a process of mapping every well across the constituency, because as you would appreciate, water flows, and therefore we want to be able to assess how effective the infrastructure across the constituency happens to be, such that we can capture as much of the surface water, get them into the wells, and at the same time we can also contribute to ensuring that the aquifers can actually be refilled, given that there's a drought. And therefore that's something that is a small project that will continue, and I know that we will be reaching out to engage you in terms of where the wells are in the constituency, certainly the various manholes to be able to assess how effective they happen to be. As I said, this is work that's already been started, and we want to ensure that we have a proper understanding as to what is the infrastructure that's meant to service the constituency, and be in a position, obviously, then to assess whether or not the infrastructure is working. Now, a lot of this relies on, yes, local knowledge, and that is local knowledge is important. However, there's also the side of it where we have to critically determine whether or not what is actually in place is working. And therefore, I think we need to ensure that there's a nice blend between the local knowledge and any professional expertise that may be brought to bear in terms of responding to any specific issues. And I believe that it is within that environment that we then will be able to move forward. And the truth is, period by period, event by event, we should be in a position to assess how effective any solutions that we have been able to put in place, how effective some of those solutions have been, so that we can constantly seek to improve where we are. And so this season, and I know that obviously in the midst of a pandemic, we are all worried and certainly about our families in terms of the health side. Naturally, the second thing is obviously a number of persons in the constituency and across the country have lost their jobs because of the closure of tourism and other related activities. And this demonstrates, as we've been saying, at the international level, that Barbados, whilst we are regarded as a middle-income country, we are vulnerable, just like the rest of the small island states. And therefore, I think COVID-19 has demonstrated that vulnerability. But being vulnerable does not mean that we can't help ourselves. And therefore, as citizens, community by community, from Elizabeth Park and Regency Park down in the west, up to Thornbury Hill in the east, Edie Village in the north, Wotton and Water Street in the south, Kings and everybody in between. The reality is that community by community, we have to be able to leverage the skills of everybody who's prepared to participate, and ensure that we can keep the communities as resilient as possible, so that we can build capacity to be able to respond to any specific disasters. We have a lot of work still to be done, and I urge your patience, because as you would appreciate, the dynamic has changed, but because we are in the midst of the hurricane season, and infrastructurally, we know it's important to ensure that we prepare as a country. And therefore, I would just ask that certainly any feedback that you have, as I said, feel free to let us know. We do have a list of vulnerable people across the constituency, in the context of persons who may live alone, persons with children with disabilities, and the like. So that, and obviously that list is not exhaustive, and therefore one of the things that we would appreciate is sharing of certainly that information, or contacting my office with that kind of information, so that the persons, not just within the DEO, but certainly my office, I know that the welfare department also monitors the list as well, to ensure that we can respond to people. So as we have been doing certainly throughout this pandemic in terms of providing some relief across the constituency, obviously within the context of a hurricane season, it takes on a slightly different perspective, because there may be people certainly with mobility issues that in the event that there is a tropical storm or hurricane or any other natural disaster, that within communities we can respond and ensure that we look out for those persons that are most vulnerable. So this is always work in progress, and therefore we would appreciate everybody's ability to participate and help build resilience in the communities. Now, I think the DEO chairman is ready. At this particular point in time, I'm going to ask the chairman of the DEO for the constituency, Mr. Jason Griffith, who I think is going to share his screen with you this afternoon, to just take us through and give us an update in terms of what has been happening in the area of Wharton, with respect to some of the remedial works that either has been completed or in progress to date, so that everybody is on the same page with respect to that. And then at the end of that, we'll come back and take any questions that you may have. I just want to remind you that you can WhatsApp me, you can put questions in the chat. You can also put questions or comments on YouTube as well, and I will take the opportunity just to read a few that's relevant, and we'll try to respond to as many questions or queries as possible. So Jason, if you're hearing me, over to you.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, Jason, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. I'm sharing my screen in a bit. Just give me a sec.
Yeah, I'm not hearing you.
Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Roger that.
Okay. All right, great. So today we are basically going to go through the update as it relates to Wharton in the community and what the DEO has done. It was a pretty arduous task in terms of ensuring that we are able to get as much achieved as possible. We had to liaise with a lot of personnel, being in the ministry, persons on the ground, in terms of residents understanding where we are. So we were basically, technically, I would say, the DEO really started back, reactivated in 2018, July in 2018. Now, this was because we recognized that there wasn't an active DEO in the constituency, and it was something that we really needed to get happen. Then in the interim stage, we had established an interim executive committee, and this was also done in 2018. That was to ensure that we can have something running at that point in time to get so that we can get going. Now, quickly after that, we recognized that Wharton being the area, a flood zone area, we did a profile back in September of 2018. And once we completed that profile, we actually did a town hall, and that town hall was actually held on the 6th of September 2018. A lot has happened since then. So as we go through, I will show you some of the events that happened since then. So quickly after that, in 2019, the first elected executive committee was established, and that was established on June 9th last year. Now, since then, the DO started to engage again. We really started to engage the governmental agencies. So we would have spoken with drainage, and we had a lot of conversations with drainage in trying to ensure that we were able to get this aspect up and going. Now, just some background, the DO really meets every fourth Sunday of the month. Now, that is a general meeting. Of the last couple of months, it has been via Zoom, and that happens around about 5 o'clock or so on a Sunday, on the fourth Sunday of every month. That's a protocol, and that's a standard meeting. So as we go through, you will be able to see. Now, here are some of the results of the profile we would have done in 2018. Now, as you can see, the state of some of the wells and some of the culverts. Now, for here, this is a culvert. Culvert really is the connection between a well and there's an underground channel from one side of the road to the next where the water settles and flows to the well. So this is one. You recognize here that the culvert, the grill to the culvert is actually missing, and it's actually very dangerous for persons. You could easily step in it, particularly at night, and you could easily injure yourself. Another thing, we also noticed that there was a collapsed well on the Watton pasture. Now, this was a significant focus of our works, and we will come to this aspect later. And then we also noted a lot of cases where the wells and the grills in those areas were very poorly maintained. And we subsequently had conversations with the drainage department and the ministry as a whole to actually try to clear these things. So what are some of the general issues that we would have indicated? So the first thing, the maintenance throughout the communities. Now you will see here where the well covers are cracked, and this seems to be a recurring theme across the constituency, not necessarily only in Watton, but Watton has quite a bit of them. And we will definitely endeavor to try to ascertain all the wells. As Ryan had indicated, the DEO is embarking on a mission to map every single well across the constituency so that we know exactly what we are dealing with, and also to assist the ministry, because one of the things that was quite apparent was the ministry doesn't necessarily know exactly where all the wells are located. And in our conversations with them, the fact that we would have actually started to map some of these wells actually assisted them in being able to identify and actually come and clean these wells going forward. So the other thing we also noted was that there were rusted, as I say, rusted grills and culverts. You see here, again, the culvert is actually, the grill for the culvert is actually missing. And the well, as you can see, the well is actually on someone's property behind the fence. So those are kind of some things that we also need to take into note, because when the ministry actually comes to clean, actually these wells are not supposed to be enclosed, because it's actually part of the public property. In this instance, it is, even though it is enclosed behind a fence, and the person can actually access the well, because there isn't a gate to this property, a gate added on to this property, so therefore the well can't be accessed. But you're not supposed to be enclosing the wells onto your property behind a fence, because they need to be always accessible. The other area that of note, now this is actually a septic tank that is located in Clearview. As you can see, it is in a horrible state. And this area actually floods very, very badly. So you can definitely imagine, and we will come to this later, but at this point you can see there the bricks, the galvanized, the pieces of wood. Now, the issue here is that because this is a community tank, the National Housing actually comes to pump off this water twice a week, every week. So they always have to be accessing this area, lifting up and putting back down the slabs actually is what causes the slabs to crack, and it's actually in there. We have been in conversations with the general manager of the National Housing, who actually would be taking into account, and he knows of this issue. However, we have to get this addressed as soon as possible. So moving on straight into Wharton as a flood zone in its entirety. So we can see here, and I would have identified some key landmarks on the screen. So you see here, this is Salvation Army Church. The boys' school is actually located here, and the girls' school is located right here. Now, this is the pasture behind the boys' school and the girls' school. This is Salvation Army Drive all the way across. As you can see here, this is Cherrywood Circle, which usually is a place where we have tremendous amounts of flooding. Anytime we have a downpour. And then there's also Clearview, which also has some flooding. And so these are the three main areas which have flooding most of the time when we have lots of rains. Now you'll also notice that on the maps. Now these wells had already been mapped, and the ministry will know of these wells, but these are the critical wells. Now, what I would note here is that Wharton, and between Wharton, Kingston, and Lodge Road, there are over this is probably the most densely populated as it relates to wells in a square footage area. That being said, we then know that we need to ensure that we are taking care of the wells. So there's no shortage of wells within the Wharton area. We just need to ensure that they are adequately cleared in a timely fashion to be able to take the water away safely, so that we can try to mitigate the flooding before it comes. So as you see here, in 2018, we had the impact of the flooding for Tropical Storm Kurt, as it was at that point in time. Now, during that time, this is actually in Cherrywood Circle. You could see where the water is to these guys. And this is not a good thing, because as I would have shown you previously, there is also the septic tank which this water will be traversing over. So that's a topic we will deal with later. And over here, you can see the BDF. Now the BDF had to be called out. It was around 2:30 in the morning, in the wee hours in the morning, when Tropical Kurt was passing. And mind you, we didn't have a direct hit, but it just passed just north of Barbados. We had such flooding, but the defense force had to be called in because there was a pregnant lady who had to be taken out of her house because she was trapped. So these kind gentlemen actually were assisting in getting these persons and getting the lady out of her house. As I said, this was 2:30 in the morning. not a good feeling. And we're trying to ensure that this doesn't happen again. So we are really relying on everyone as a community to ensure that we do our parts and ensure that we are able to keep the area cleared, the wells cleared. Now, the other aspect is, this is over on Venus Drive. So as you can see here, this is, water was about 3 feet. You can see it's very slight, but the water mark before we had gotten was actually to this point here on the wall. And you can see the car over there. Now, this area, again, floods. And oddly, you would be able to see during or after the passage of Hurricane Kirk, there is a well, this well here, which is actually located up here. This, if you are looking at this, if you drive up this way, which is this road, this is where this well is located. As you can see, it was up a hill. Now, strange enough, all the water that you were seeing here was actually pumped into this well. So round about, I think they started around 4:30 in the afternoon, and they finished around about 1 o'clock in the morning. They used 2 pumps to pump all of this water, which actually filtered all the way to the pasture and pumped it into this well. By the next day, you could see how dry out here was. What this meant is that we have the capacity of the wells already within the area. The bigger problem was that this well, the water bypassed the well and came down the road and settled down here. Now, this was one of the things that were noted. So we had some conversations with one of the technical persons with the ministry, particularly the drainage department, as well as the PS. And we came up with some mitigation measures. Now, these are some of the mitigation measures that we had planned and also implemented as we go forward. So as it was shown there, the culvert, the water was actually bypassing the well via the culvert. So what they had decided is that they were going to remove the culvert and install a box drain across the road in Venus Drive, and that's the Venus Drive. We also determined at that point that we will rebuild the collapsed well close to the pasture, and we will come to that later in the presentation as well. They also would have designed and increased the water retention area for drainage, and as well as clean and maintain some of the wells in Cherrywood Circle and Venus Drive. This also included Clearview. So what had been implemented thus far? As was indicated before, this is the hill that you indicated. The culvert actually flowed across the road here, under the road. But as shown, we had indicated that we were going to take that out, and a box drain was installed. So this is a 2-foot square box drain and 2 feet deep, which will hold all the water. So once the water comes down, and it comes down here and flows along the road, it will go into the box drain and then flow towards the well. That will take some of the pressure off the wells lower down on Venus Drive. So that was the first measure that was actually implemented in early 2019 after our consultations. And that was actually implemented before the rainy season of 2019. Secondly, we have this well on the pasture. So as you can see here, this well was pretty much collapsed. They had to make a determination whether they were going to reconstruct it or they were going to dig a new well. This is how the well looked. It was unsightly. It really didn't have any, it really wasn't working. This is some of the effects of the flooding, even though it had dissipated at some points in time. You can see here the water. If you look, this is a geotag of exactly where the well is, and this is where guys was indicating that we had actually started. So this was in a report that we would have sent to the ministry, highlighting exactly where the well was, so that when they are making their plans, they could actually have a direct reference logged to where the well is. And this is where we are looking to solicit your engagement to do this and replicate this across the constituency so that we could clearly identify and locate all and catalog all the wells within the area. That being said, last year, we would have embarked with the ministry the construction of the well. So the area was cleared. This is actually the rubble. This is the casing of the well. They would have gone in and dug it out. And they actually started to reconstruct the well. So as you can see here, they started a 8x8 well, and this is one of the workers inside the well building up the casings. And as you can see here, it is fairly deep, 8x8 well, fairly well constructed with ring beams every 5 feet. Now this casing actually went down over 25 feet before they butt rock. And then the well was dug to 50 feet. So including the casing, the well is 50 feet deep, 8x8 square. Now this is going to take one of the major wells that we are going to be relying on to take the water away from the areas, and we will definitely come to this later. So, and you can see here, this is partly when it was being constructed. You could see the levers there, and on here is when they pretty much was at the point, and this is all the marl that came out from in the well, and when they actually put on the cap to the well. So that was the first of the major hurdles we had to pass, where we would have installed a 8x8 50-foot well on the pasture to try to alleviate some of the flooding. Secondly, there was another well, and this was more on Venus Drive. So as it was indicated earlier, this is Venus Drive. So this is 2nd Avenue here, Venus Drive. This is where you would have initially seen the flooding, of which I had indicated that the this water was actually pumped back up here to this well, which you would have seen earlier. The box drain was installed here. However, this old plantation well, as you can see, it still has the soft stone and circular well, is actually located here on the pasture. So this was fully inundated when we had Tropical Storm Kurt, and it had subsided somewhat that we can actually get out on the pasture. But as you can see here, this is the line we would have imposed and brought it up close. I'll get a close up. This is actually the watermark to where the water had actually gone to. And you can see this is actually on this house. So you can see how high the water was going directly across here. And this is where, and this was the well in which all of that water was expected to be drained. In conversations with the ministry and some background local knowledge, and I would really want to single out David Conrabach, who actually lives right here. He was very instrumental in giving some good local knowledge to the technical personnel, being the engineers and the land surveyors, of where the water is coming from and how best that they could some good local knowledge of the trail and trek of the water in the area. So again, they started to construct the well. So they took down the entire well. They started to rebuild here, as you can see. Then, as you see, this is still some progress of where we were. This is pretty much the kind of the finished product. As you can see how low this well is compared to the houses. So the water should flow. And this is the top of the well, another 8x8 well, 50 feet deep, to take the water away from the house. So this last view will give you a good perspective, so you can actually see where we are and how low a level the well has been located. This is the ground level for the Venus Drive. So the emphasis here was to ensure and pull the water away from the houses and the personnel into the water retention storage until such time as the wells can dissipate the water. And that is the whole genesis. What was the plan? So that is where we were. So technically, this whole started in terms of developing the water retention area had actually commenced on, I think, just on the door, then Tropical Storm Dorian, which turned into Hurricane Dorian later. It actually was I think it was in August 25th or something like that, if I remember, where we actually started the works to create the water retention to alleviate the flooding. So these are a sample of some of the trucks that were being utilized. There was a D9. There were actually two excavators and numerous trucks carting away a lot of material to this area.
These elections were credible.
So this is also another aspect where you can see they're actually via the excavator, and this is the land surveyor who was very ensuring that it was properly laid out, and he was one that was really listening to us with the local knowledge of the area and taking into account our advice and information on how to spec out and design this piece. So his name is Julian, and he really worked expeditiously to get this implemented. These guys would have worked up until 1:30 in the morning, trying to move and get this area cleared, just in case that the then pending tropical storm Dorian actually had a severe impact on our island, that there was actually some capacity on the pasture to hold the water until such time as the wells could dissipate the water. The next slide actually shows one of the meetings that we had with. So as you can see here, this is the Minister William Duguay, the Minister of Transport and Works. This is Southern Books, who is the consultant to the DEM for the DEOs. Again, here is the Minister for Air, Rand Strong. This is the PS, the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry. Being secluded, being obstructed behind there is actually David Cumberbatch, who was one of the residents who was given some great advice. This is myself here. This is Terrell Ennis, one of the engineers from out of the drainage department. And this is also Peter Eswick, who actually joined the team in touring what had actually started and what we needed to do to complete the works for our area. This was a critical time within the project because we had seen some aspects that needed to be addressed, and we held a meeting with them to ensure that these things were adequately being taken into account and went within the design. So after that, you would actually see this is where we actually started to do the swales around the pasture. So technically there are 4 wells on the pasture. So I would have shown you initially, there's the well over there. There's a well here. I would also show you via a bird's eye view where the 4 wells are located. There's one over here and one back there. This is some of the grading that was done once the area had been designed. This is where the well has been located that you would have seen initially. And this is another one of the wells that is located. So as you can see, there is, and this descent in here is what you call a swale. So technically what is happening, and this is the pasture. So what happens is the water actually is, and what was designed, the water is supposed to flow away from the residents into these swales, which totally circumvent the pasture and store here. Depending on how high the water gets, the wells will become engaged and dissipate the water in time, so that we should not, fingers crossed, that we would not have any flooding within the area. But again, this is still working in progress. Again, this is the well and the continuance of the swale. This is where the well was actually being constructed. So this actually shows one of the houses in Cherrywood Circle, where you can actually see here the watermark. Shows the watermark of where the water was. As you can see there, it's fairly high. That's about 2.5 feet high, and it is actually to the level of the ground sill of the house. So therefore, some level of water would have actually gone into this house. Okay, so here is some pictures of some of the flooding that actually occurred in Clearview Drive. Now, I would have originally indicated that there is a well here, and this is technically where the septic tank is located. Cherrywood Circle is actually located behind here. So what happens is when the water, and I could, sorry. So what happens is, and this is the road without any water or flooding. So the water comes all the way down here, and we had tried to get some remedial works done because this road was in state of disrepair. Comes down this road, there is one well here and the other well located at this point. Once here is flooded, then it comes up, flows over the septic tank, and goes towards Cherrywood Circle. So that is where it was indicated. You always have to note and understand your surroundings, because really and truly, it's good practice when there is stagnant water not to walk through water, because you do not know what contaminants are within the water, and it is a health hazard too. So that is just some things to note. But we have tried to alleviate this issue. So that is currently being dealt with. So here, as you can see, these are the two wells in those two areas, and this is the septic tank that we would have seen. Now, the slides that are going to come is some surveys that we would have done with the residents back in 2018, trying to understand how prepared persons are, how prepared some persons are for the hurricane season as it relates to disaster plans. Now, you would see a pie chart here. Now, this in red, do you and your family have any emergency plans in place to follow in the event you need to evacuate your home? Now, as you can see here, basically 2/3 of persons that responded, and 32 persons have responded, indicated no, that they do not have an emergency plan in place. I think that this is something, this speaks volume, and if this is extrapolated across the entire grouping, you could understand the level of preparedness that persons have. So this is one of the things we need to be very cognizant of. and you'll have time for some questions as a little later. Now, another pertinent question that we had here was, is your house and contents adequately insured for flood, fire, and hurricane? Now, most persons, again, 2/3 of the persons either indicated no or not sure if their houses are adequately insured. No, Watson being a flood-prone area, even though that we are doing some mitigation measures and working very, very closely with the ministry, you still need to ensure that you are preparing for any eventualities. So the government is doing their part, the DEO is doing its part to communicate and coordinate in the response effort, but we as a community also need to ensure that we are also responding. So with that. Additionally, one of the other questions that we asked with regards to the with regards to this was, does you or your family, or you have an established meeting point for your family to reunite if you had to be separated during or after a hurricane or any impact for that matter? It doesn't necessarily need to be a hurricane, could be a fire, could be a tsunami, could be a earthquake. Again, just around 2/3 of persons indicate that they do not currently have a specific meeting point. So let's say the communication has gone down and you cannot reach your family, persons within your household will not know where to meet you in the event that you had to be split up or separated. So that pretty much is the end of my presentation thus far. And these are some contact points here. This is the email on which you could reach the DEO. It's Christchurch Essential DEO@gmail.com. This is a WhatsApp that you can reach us. And there also is a Facebook. If you search for at CCEC DEO, you will get to the Facebook page. So if I will move. So do we have any questions or queries? You can move to the segment where we can take any questions with regards to what was presented or any questions as it relates directly to the DEO. So I open up the floor for any questions. Not hearing you, Ryan. I think you're on mute.
You can hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Sorry. Sorry about that. No, before we get into the questions, I think the information. Let me thank you for the presentation, because I think it was very comprehensive in terms of the information and I can hear an echo, so that's why it is. So the last two slides, I think, certainly demonstrates, just on a very basic level, that we need to at least have a plan and at least have somewhere that persons can meet in the event that they're separated. And therefore, without getting into the details of all the other elements of disaster preparedness, I would want to indicate that clearly we would need to take another poll across the constituency to first to ascertain that level of preparedness across the constituency. I know that we all wait until there's a name storm approaching Barbados before we start to run up to the supermarket and buy all the batteries and buy all the soda bikes and the Eclipse and all of that, which is what is normal behavior. But I think those two questions that you just posed at the end and the results, even though limited in scope, I think at least on the surface tells us that we need to ensure that at least at a family level, that we can go through community by community and help to develop some of those very basic plans to actually to have in place. So I see I see there are someone indicated in the chat to me privately, clearly that the information that you presented should be done for every community area. And of course, that is work in progress. And I think the reason that we are here today and we want to elicit the participation of as many people as possible is to ensure that we can accelerate the work in order to put us in a position to have that complete coverage in terms of that. Now, of course, we can't promise, or I certainly can't promise that we can respond to every single broken culvert tomorrow or broken well tomorrow, but we will systematically just go through and work to ensure that we can have it done over the shortest possible period of time. So I will just leave it there for now and invite anyone with any questions. I see Mr. Brooks is online, and therefore I see a few other hands. So I will open it up there now. You can still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay,
at this point in time, while persons are collecting their thoughts, let me say I'm very glad that the District Emergency Organization, Christchurch Central, has taken the task and have done the necessary framework that Jason and his team have been able to produce a very good presentation for our residents to see this afternoon. This is testimony to the work that a functioning DO can have significant impact on what happens and how we will respond to these various issues that will happen in your various constituencies. And Ryan, I've heard you say that someone had indicated if they will have a similar initiatives throughout the constituency. And I am quite certain Jason is preparing for that task. But as I look and I see several persons, 51 persons who are in tune with this presentation, I sincerely hope that this will act as a catalyst, that each and every one of those persons who are listening to this presentation would want to get involved and become a member of the District Emergency Organization. Because what is happening here is a success story, and it can be further success can be achieved when you get more people to come on board, more people are educated, more people see the need to take certain responsibilities in terms of helping to build the level of community resilience that we so desperately need. So I must say good job to Jason and the members of his DO. And I think Ryan, you are blessed with this DO, because I have great expectations that they will continue to do the work that is mandated from the District Emergency Organization. And I'm very glad to be in a part of this. Congratulations, Jason.
Thank you. I am seeing here in the chat, they're asking about if there's going to be training for developing emergency plans. I think that is a very interesting question. And the DO as an organization, it has numerous responsibilities. So it's not only about hurricanes and preparing for hurricanes, but it's preparing for any emergency. So with training the emergency plans, and one of the things we do is a community profile. As you would see, the Wharton was the first community profile, but that is not the only community profile that we'd have done. We'd have also done a community profile in Edie Village. We've also done a community profile in Vauxhall. We also done a community profile in Plum Grove. We've also done a community profile within, and we've started to move northward from Wharton. We started with, that is, I think that would be Agate Road, Turquoise Road, and Crystal Crescent, Maine. Because we also then recognize between Agate Road, Crystal Crescent, Maine, and Turquoise Road, along with Plum Grove, are some of the areas where the water actually flows down towards Wharton. And you need to remember that Wharton is the basin, and it's the lowest point really in our area. So the water flows all the way from the highway and flows all the way down through Kingsland, Kingsland Heights, Kingsland Terrace, Kingsland Gardens, and ends up into the basin on Wharton pasture and the pasture behind the boys' school. So that's why there are so many wells within our areas. So I had digressed a bit, but the things is, with regards, when we are doing our community profiles, and this is why the community profiles are so important. First, it identifies what are the physical issues within the area, whether they are broken culverts or any trees in the area, power lines that are affected by trees and that type of stuff. But that's one aspect. The other aspect of it is that when we see persons during the profile, we see persons, we engage with them, and that is where the answers to where you would have seen the charts coming from, because that was actually engaging with constituents when we were doing this stuff. So there, and said the profile would have gone out to Edie Village as well. It would have gone out to Vauxhall to do that. And so it was not only Wharton that had respondents to that profile, but that gets and gives us some good data so that we know how to plan, how to develop any plans, whether it be a strategic and a critical plan for the constituent as a whole, as if it affected in any way. But then we get an understanding of what plans at an individual level, a household level, a specific community level is needed. Because if we recognize that 2/3 of persons do not currently have any emergency plans in place, then that then says, okay, this is a fairly broad problem, and this is something that we will need to address, and therefore we then need to put measures in place to educate the general public on how to develop a disaster plan, what if there are any kits you need, any first aid, supplies, that type of stuff. So the community profile is a catalyst to be able to understand. And yes, the DO is here to assist persons in developing emergency plans. And that's why we are really asking for assistance and getting residents engaged so that we could wrap this up as soon as possible, as soon as possible, so that we could ensure we can get out to all of the communities. As Ryan said, Christchurch Central is very large. So you have Newton, you have Durance, you have Clearview, sorry, Calendars, you have, of course, one in Kingsland, Vauxhall, Sargent Village, Edie Village, St. David's, Ballantyne, you have Sheraton Park, Sheraton Heights, and you have Elizabeth Park, Regency Park, and you have Calendars, whether it be Park or whether it be Crescent. You have Lloyd Good, you have Thornbury Hill, also Plum Grove, as indicated before, as well as Church Hill. So it carries across a wide area, and we need to have persons engage in each area to be able to respond effectively in each area. Now, a major part of the constituency is concentrated within, I think it's about 40% concentrated between Kingsland and Watton, but that is not the extent of the constituency, and we definitely will be getting out to the other parts of the constituency. So if you guys need to get in contact, my numbers are, and I will post into the group. It's 825 43 46. So that persons can contact me if you, and I would ask you, really ask you to like our Facebook page. This allows us to get a wider reach across the constituency. As I said, if you search for CCEC DEO, you can actually sign up directly from the Facebook page. So once you click on the Facebook page, there is a sign up form there. And once you sign up, we will be alerted that you would have signed up, and therefore we can respond and accordingly to your request. So I hope, Maureen, that actually answers your questions. Are there any other questions?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Miriam, go ahead.
Hi, can the emergency shelters within the constituency be posted for residents to know where they are in the event that persons need to evacuate? That is one. And can a list of essential needs during hurricane season and numbers to agencies where they can get assistance if needs be during emergency can also be posted? Because remember, we have persons that don't have certain means, don't buy papers, may not necessarily have a radio and that kind of stuff, but they may have a little internet or whatever, or for persons that check in on elderly persons and that kind of stuff, be able to give persons information in the event that they need to have certain stuff done. So can that be something that y'all can look into, even if not at this moment, probably like in the near future for future hurricane seasons?
Okay, I'm glad you actually brought that up. So the new updated hurricane shelter booklet or emergency shelter, because it's not necessarily only hurricanes. It's emergency shelter booklet has been sent out. It was updated in May. So we could ask Ryan to probably distribute that to the constituents widely through their WhatsApps and any other mediums. It is a PDF document, so it's kind of sort of difficult to actually put it onto, and so we have to change that to images. But that is something that we could definitely work on. As it relates to the listings of items, that is something that we are currently working on to distribute. Oddly enough, our executive meeting that had just passed last Tuesday, we were talking about that same said thing, because it was actually brought up in our previous general meeting, where the same question came up about having a general list, so persons have an idea of some of the things that they need to be cognizant of as we go into this period. So yes, that is something that we definitely will be doing, ramping up and rolling out to all persons.
Miriam, just to add to what Jason has said, no, we all prepare differently. Of course, the circumstances that one may choose to go to a shelter obviously depends on how a particular event may be impacting yourself and your family. And therefore, those are decisions that clearly people make routinely every year to determine whether they will make it out at home, whether they will go by family, or whether they will go to an official shelter. The Christchurch girls, in the context of Wharton, and the Salvation Army Church are two shelters for the area. Of course, we know that Category 1 Foundation School is the shelter on that side of the constituency. Blackman and Gollop obviously is on the other side of the constituency over in St. David's. And of course, Dighton Griffith, I believe, is a Category 2 shelter as well. Now, of course, all of these things come with limitations, and I'm happy that at this particular point in time, we don't necessarily have only those four persons in isolation per some point, and with us not recording any positive tests for COVID-19 over the last couple of weeks, and I hope that continues, means that in the event that anyone may need to engage the shelters, I'm hoping that by that time we will be able to do so as safely as possible, because as you can imagine, if one has to social distance in the shelter, then that creates a whole different dynamic from that perspective. So we are working to have that distributed in our own way. Of course, the GIS as well through the Department for Emergency Management regularly gives updates in terms of what essentials you should have. But of course, what is critical at these times is really to ensure that, as I said at the meeting, water is the most basic thing that you will need in any event. Of course, your medical supplies, you should always have those available. Obviously, radios, flashlights, the standard things that you should have, as well as some foods that are not perishable. Now, if one has a generator, if you're lucky enough to have a generator is always a very useful thing to have, as well as some additional fuel in the event that there's any disruption either to power, or certainly in the context of being able to ensure that you can safely supply yourself if electricity in the event that obviously the grid goes down. Of course, they always tell you to ensure that all your important documents are secure. So that at this time, and just let me say to Selvin, thanks for your intervention. We have 35 people watching, well, 36 watching online. At the highest, it was 51, I believe, watching online on YouTube. But the bigger point I'm making is that these are things that we ought to, and certainly in the context of COVID, in terms of what we've just gone through, these are things that should come top of mind right now. So if we already have our important documents in one place, and we should ensure that by the end of the week, that we should all have our important documents in a waterproof container. Just as a matter of ensuring that as part of the development of our plans, that we are doing the very basic things that we can go and put our hands on at a moment's notice. I think the storage of water is critical. And I can't reinforce that any more, given that almost a third of the constituency has been without water today. And I hope that that situation is rectified as quickly as possible. Notwithstanding what has been published in the Auditor General's report with respect to the Preparedness Water Authority, they do have a program to install water tanks at homes. And I would urge persons to, if they're possible, to try to install a water storage tank at their home, because at least that would give you water, obviously once they supply, so that you don't have to literally be physically storing water around the place. And it would make things just a little easier from that perspective. So I would ask persons to explore that option if they don't already have that option available. And the truth is, part of this exercise, and I hope that this will be an ongoing effort where once we reach out to persons, that we speak to our families, we speak to our neighbors, we engage across the communities to try to ensure that at least the very basic things, because at the end of the day, it is the very basic things that matter. And that's why I go back to what I said at the beginning in terms of literally going around the community and ensuring that any culverts that are blocked with debris, or you see grass growing on the side of the sidewalk, just get a shovel, get a hole, and just remove it, because those are the very basic things that would allow for any, especially in the watering area, to ensure that we reduce the risk of flooding during this time. And I mean that, because if we can help ourselves, then it means that we're in a position, obviously, to minimize the discomfort that may come about because of other that may inconvenience other persons. Yes, sorry, I was reading one of the comments on the chat. So, are there any other questions, any other comments? Because I'm conscious that we have reached 6:30, but I wanted to engage as many people as possible, and encourage everybody
Hello.
to consider joining the video. Hello. Sorry, I'm searching. Candy? Sorry.
Hello.
Marvel?
Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Good afternoon to everybody. What I would like to find out, with the shortage of water, and we have a few springs that give off gallons of water every day, is it possible that we can tap into that water to be used as drinking water?
Yes, the interestingly, this came up at cabinet a few months ago, and as I learned then that there are actually laws that determine what happens with springs. So that is in the process of being amended. Apparently, Three Houses has a spring, and all Pori Spring has a sorry, Three Houses has an act, Forest Spring has an act, and the reality is that we have been in conversations with the farmers and the persons who use some of the water that you see flowing for agriculture purposes, because whilst we want to ensure that persons have access to drinking water, persons also rely on the springs for agriculture purposes. So it's just creating a balance and ensuring that coming up with those consultations that nobody's necessarily disadvantaged. So yes, the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources and the BWA, Preparedness Water Authority, they're exploring that very actively in order to ensure that, one, as we seek to ramp up our agriculture production right now, in the context of COVID, in the context of a significant drought that Barbados is facing, that how we manage the water resources. And so I think over the course of the next couple of years, you will see the damming of more places, because as you know, a lot of the rain that falls in the country just runs straight into the sea. And so the Ministry of Transport working with the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources will be damming and creating more water ponds to be able to capture water, so that instead of the rainwater running into the sea, that we can have that water, rather than having that surface runoff, that we can recharge the aquifers as quickly as faster by being able to trap the water and getting it down into the wells and into the aquifers, so that we can better sustain the water supply for the country. So we're looking at everything very, very, very actively, and that is something that I'm sure the ministry, as well as the Preparedness Water Authority, will be able to engage the public on. But very, very good suggestion. Thanks very much.
Just a quick thing as it relates to the hurricane shelters. So you need to be very cognizant of the difference between a Category 1 shelter and a Category 2 shelter. Now, a Category 1 shelter is available before, during a hurricane. A Category 2 shelter is only available after the impact, if it is still usable. So for our area, we do not really have any hurricane shelters in the constituency, because we have to rely on Blackman Gallup in the north and Christchurch Foundation in the south. Now from here, and please note that there is a limited capacity for these shelters. So the capacity for Blackman Gallup is 70 persons, and this was pre-COVID-19. The capacity for Foundation School is 75 persons. You can also note that Blackman Gallup actually has wheelchair access. However, Foundation School is 75 persons, but does not have wheelchair access. Both of them have potable water, and generators are supposed to be installed at both locations. So those are the only two in our area that you can actually go to before the hurricane. The girls' school, the Dighton Griffith, or that is the girls' school, Dighton Griffith, Salvation Army, or the hall at Christchurch Parish Church are all Category 2s, and you can only go to that after the hurricane or the emergency has passed, if it's still viable. So that was just something to note. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Just further, you indicated that the 70 and 75, that's 70 and 75 for not just the constituency, but as you would appreciate, that you have Christchurch South, Christchurch West, Christchurch East, because Foundation School obviously services that entire area. So the reality is that persons should, and people normally do go to the shelters if they believe that the storm is serious enough to warrant it. And therefore that is something that is clearly a personal choice for families, and that's why it's important that as part of your own internal family assessment of your emergency plan is an evaluation of that. When should you go to the shelter or not? And therefore, once numbers are limited, it's something that is still very much up to persons to be able to assess for themselves. And the truth is, only you would know your own situation, and therefore it's something that we hope that we don't have, we will not want to have to engage, but it's a decision quite clearly that individual families would have to make in terms of whether they go to the shelter or not. But it's important to have the information out there. We will cascade that as much as we can, but ultimately the decision is up to people as to whether they go to the shelters or not.
But to reiterate, you should look at being able to shelter at home or with a family member as opposed to going to the shelter, because the shelter is very basic. You actually have to carry all your food, your medications. There are a fair bit of restrictions there. So as much as possible, secure your homes and try to make them as best as possible, or have some plan to go to a family member or neighbor, as opposed to trying to have to go to make the shelters, the public shelters, absolute last resort, because you have there's so many restrictions when you go in there, and it is not necessarily going to be as comfortable as you think it would be.
Yeah, thanks very much. Any other questions, comments, queries? Because we do have a lot of work to complete. The remedial works. Jason didn't even get an opportunity to go through the rest of the wells and culverts and all the stuff that needs to be done, not just in Wharton, but across the constituency, because we would appreciate that all of the water that may end up in Wharton comes from higher elevation, which is coming all from Kingston, from Newton, all of those areas coming down. So that's why we have started the process of assessing, cataloging where all the wells are in the constituency. And we want to, over time, be able to assess how effective the well infrastructure is in the constituency, so that all of the water that we see running all the way down the road into the sea, that we have a mechanism for capturing as much of that water as possible, and in a sense help to improve the water supply in the country. And this is something that, as a government, we want to be able to replicate community by community across the country to ensure that the infrastructure actually works in the interest of citizens, rather than becoming a threat to either your lives or certainly to your property. Because having worked to build a life for yourselves and your families, you want to ensure that the protection of life obviously is utmost priority. And then second to that, to ensure that your property can be maintained in the best way possible. So once again, I urge everybody to look around their communities, and if there are any drains that are blocked, any grass that you see growing up beside the sidewalk, please get a shovel, get a hoe, just move it, because it is that blockage. And as I think part of what Jason didn't say happened last time, and this is something that we all must be conscious of. When you saw the photograph of the flooding in Cherrywood Circle, I remember when we were out there the following morning or so, a gentleman came up with a long stick, probably about, I don't know, it's probably about 20 feet long, maybe, and literally was poking the drain, and when all the water, and within less than 10 minutes, all of the water had dissipated. And what we saw was just grass that had been cut. It blew pretty much to the mouth of the drain, and it blocked it. And that, so where Jason was showing you where the BDF was taking the pregnant lady out, part of the reason for that was because the grass had blocked the hole. And the truth is that before and routinely, that could have been avoided to some degree in terms of the buildup of water. And therefore, something as simple as that, I think it's, we all have to play our part within the communities to ensure that we help ourselves in order to be able to prevent such widespread flooding. And I know that there are other areas in the constituency that have some localized flooding where as soon as you get a little rain, the water settles. There are parts of Kingsland, there are parts of I know Newton in Durham as well, and other areas where we have these local issues. So all I'm asking persons to do is just assess around the area and what may be blockages. Let's seek to remove those blockages. And then obviously I know that there is repair to be done, which obviously only the government can do those repairs, which is what the government is responsible for. And once we have that information, obviously we will get it cataloged and hope to have it responded to as quickly as possible. But I think when we look around, just from canvassing and walking across the constituency, whether it is wells within the housing unit at Wharton or just culverts and across the country and certainly across the country, there's a significant amount of repair that needs to be done, and we are just going to try to work systematically to ensure that we can get those repairs done. So I beg you for your patience, but we will try to respond to them as quickly as we can. And I think as we continue to build up the profiles across the communities in the constituency, then we will start to get a better sense as to the state of the infrastructure and seek to respond to that as soon as we can. But just bear in mind that this is happening all over the country. So it's something that we got a little bit of priority because Wharton has long been an area that has experienced flooding. We've done similar work down in Murphy's Pasture in the city, where that community experienced something similar as well. And I know that works will have been ongoing there. So we will try our best to respond. And I think it's something that we will once we know, we will get them on the schedule to have them respond as quickly as possible. Okay. Anything else from anybody?
Hi, Miriam here again.
Hi, Miriam.
The well that is directly to the edge of the road in Wharton, which is like just about 50 meters away from the Salvation Army. Has anybody checked on that well as lately? Because usually once there's a heavy downpour, then that well usually overflows and spills onto the road too as well. So I'm just wondering if anybody has checked on that lately. That is one. And two, in the aftermath, after hurricane has been, or any disaster has been done and the all clear is given, do you have a volunteer list of persons that can assist with certain jobs, probably like if somebody's roof had blown off or anything, that within their area, if they would be willing to help like do basic repairs or anything like that? Because I'm thinking that you can't always wait on government to do everything, and once the person can have like their materials and stuff at hand, as long as you know what has happened, if person you can gather a team to help like assist the person in repairs and that kind of stuff. Those are just some of the basic things that I'm wondering.
Thanks, Miriam. Certainly these, I'm not certain of the skill set that exists within here, but I do know there are lots of tradesmen across the constituency. And therefore, part of what we are trying to achieve is to have identified a set of people who may wish to join the DU, because I know that in terms of being able to pay some trees, which I know will be responded to pretty soon, but it depends on the availability certainly of persons who want to volunteer, and two, obviously in the context of a response post disaster, then the damage assessment is normally done, and this is not necessarily an academic exercise, but it is truly to assess how much damage has been done. And I know that through the UDC, which is the Urban Development Commission, as well as the Rural Development Commission, in conjunction with the DOs, assessment and try to determine how to respond. So in a sense, government, yes, tries to respond from a central perspective, but certainly if persons, and we do have information, at least in terms of the constituency, we have information on persons, professions, and stuff like that, which we could potentially match with persons of this sort there. I would imagine that in a post disaster, carpenter and a mason, obviously plumbers will be in high demand if you have significant damage. So that too becomes only a slight issue only from the perspective of how they will be deployed. So we will obviously seek to, Jason, pull that information together, but obviously people will ultimately have to choose who they want to do any repairs on their home. So we will try to provide the persons within the constituency, which clearly once they're close, can respond. But ultimately that depends on what is agreed, obviously, between the homeowner and anybody who may have come to do any work on this space. You had asked a question about the well by the Salvation Army. Was
Yes.
that
Right.
500 meters down, 50 meters down the gap, at the very end of the pasture, before the junction on the left-hand side, which takes you down to Montrose.
Oh, okay. You talk about right by the edge of the pasture, where people walk across, right?
Which
Yes.
Last time I saw a little bit of bush around there, but
that is one of the one of the places besides Venus Drive and Cherrywood Circle that water usually, because if the bush has not been cleared, right. There is usually like a blockage so that the water cannot run in properly to the well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll get the debushing team for the constituency to
check on it.
To check on it next week, make sure that it's cleared properly.
Well, I will add to that. So the drainage teams, and let me just give a broad synopsis on Westmoreland. The drainage team has embarked on clearing some of the critical wells in the area. So there are about 2 wells in Cherrywood Circle, a couple wells within Clearview, and a few in Venus Drive that have actually been cleared already and are in train. So they actually started earlier this year. I think they're currently in Venus Drive. Sorry, they're currently in Clearview doing that well there. But that is actually cleaning the well. Clearing the well, however, is more of a community thing where you ensure that the track towards the well is clean. That is something that can easily be done by residents. So the government and the DO coordinating with that can ensure that we can get the wells cleaned. So even though you can have a case where the water is actually getting to the well, but the well is not actually dissipating the water properly, that's an issue where you actually have to clean the well. However, what we have been recognizing is that the wells are actually working properly, but they're not cleared. So that is what the problem then is, that the persons are not clearing the entrance to the well, which is causing a lot of the flooding that we get. So the emphasis now is for persons within the community, if there's sediment and stuff in the drains, please clear that so that the water can flow into the well via the grills properly. If it's a bigger issue now with the well needing to be cleaned, that's a much bigger thing. And then that is where the government and the department then now needs to come and actually physically send someone down into the well and clear the fissures of the well so the water can dissipate. So I hope that that gives you guys a clear demarcation of where the roles and responsibilities with regards to the constituents and the DO, as well as the coordinator, as well as government, with regards to ensuring that we have a sustainable infrastructure running. So clearing the area is responsibility of the residents and the constituents so that the water can flow to the well. And we have a lot of wells, so that shouldn't be a problem. And if there are issues with the well and not working properly, then we actually have to engage the services of the government to actually clean those wells. So I hope that helps.
You want to say something, Marlon?
I think somebody's trying to talk, but they're on mute. Let me just.
Marlon? I'm trying to unmute you.
Hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Can't hear you now.
All right. I think it's we have a sense of false belief that the wells on the pasture, at the bottom of the pasture, the western end of the pasture works. It is a false belief. I'll tell you, I've been here since 1981. There was a suck down there which used to take all the water off the pasture from up Kingsland Oil. The engineering department, my good friend, rest in peace, Keith Barr, came and we had a talk, but they said, no, it is a holding, it's the whole water coming off the road and off the pasture. So it really, I don't know if to stop the suck or what. So what is happening, and it's the first time any water run up, except down Cherry Tree Hill. Water, when they get full, water comes back through the track from on the bottom of the pasture, behind my house, through that track, come right up, behind, runs back to, and goes up, because that's the only way it can get, because it's raising, and then goes down into Cherrywood and all of those. So it ain't only the water coming down that way, and which the one that should be getting into wells on the down there don't do also. Also the well which is closest to the Salvation Army has no real, is one of those old time wells with some barriers and some siren thing. And whenever rain falls, whatever comes from off the road, off of Montrose Road now, runs into that with all the stuff, and if it does not get cleaned properly, then it fills very fast. Then that helps put the water here by me. We have a well by my neighbor, which is pull, has never stopped pulling. So praise God, has never stopped pulling. All we have to do is keep it clear. But because of the influx of the water coming from the main road, from the behind me, and coming down the main road here, Salvation Army Drive, then the only other outlet is to go into Cherrywood Circle and all the others and flood up down there. So I am saying that if we can get somebody to look at making sure that the suck is a suck and working, I don't know if it gets stopped up, but it used to be, and that's why I was here when they had the 83 flood. I was here all the other times while I've been here. And I don't think, I only believe that what has caused it, well, to get some wells in over there. And we hold as much water at different times as anywhere else, just to have the wells clear. There was, and you say clear, but obviously when it's coming down, when the stuff is coming down from above, you don't know when it get into the, as we who go to the rain and clear, we go to the rain and clear to make sure that the water going in. Otherwise, when it get a certain level, it will go back into down there and then out there flood again. We also get flood here, but we've lived with it as part of life. Fortunate for me, even though I appear to be in the lowest place here, I've never had to leave here, and in all those years, water's come to the veranda, and if any unscrupulous body drives through with the 4x4s, and then we get a little bit in the house by coming up through the door. But I am saying that we need to clean the wells. There's nobody. I've been here. I don't see that one. Don't really got a lot of cleaning. Don't need a lot of cleaning because it don't really got a lot of stuff. The one to my left, but the one closer to the Salvation Army, I've been around. I know the drainage people come and check, see how deep it is and that kind of thing. But they don't. I don't think they realize that the time has come for them to come and clean. The last time when before it ran took over, when the other well opposite, when they went and suddenly tried to do it, it fell in. So that now only has one here, and that was a feeder well anyhow. But this one here on the right of me, which is just after you pass the Salvation Army, will need cleaning because it is an open well in the way that it has space of about 4 inches or 5 inches between each railing, and that don't stop the stuff from going on. So the mud and everything goes in, but that comes from off the main road, off of Mount Rose main road, because it is at that point that it comes down. So we need to get somebody to look into that, and maybe that may help the problem. It may be, just maybe. Thank you.
Okay.
I
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Ryan, let me just handle this for a bit. So there are a couple of things. So as you remember, I had indicated there are numerous wells within, and there are many wells within the network. So what you have indicated is accumulation of water coming down all the way from Newton all the way down. Now, the problem is that because the water is not being taken off sufficiently as it comes down, the capacity and volume of water reaching down to Watton inundates the wells within Watton. What is being proposed and what is supposed to happen is that the wells all the way up. So when you were talking about coming down, that is Salvation Army. Now, all of those wells, there are about 3 or 4 wells that are actually situated in on Salvation Army Drive that are supposed to take some of the water before it gets right down to the bottom. Now, the well that you were talking about on the pasture, that is really supposed to take the water coming off the road. The pasture of itself has been set up as a water retention area, meaning that, and the focus is to keep the water away from the houses until such time as that, and that is how it was designed. Whether or not it is working efficiently may be another issue. But what I'm saying is it has been designed that the pasture of itself is supposed to retain some of the water until such time the well can suck the water. What I would say though is that that well of itself may very well need cleaning because it takes too long to suck off the water. So that is indeed noted, and that is something that we will have consultation with the drainage department. However, on the other side, we have started clearing and cleaning wells in Cherrywood Circle. So there are 2 wells that were cleaned in Cherrywood Circle. And then there are 2 wells that are cleaned in Clearview. So it takes the water at a higher elevation so it would not get down to the basin.
I've heard you, sir. What I laugh because the well on the we have a chamber and everything looks very good down at the end of the pasture. It's supposed to take the water from the road. Now, before it used to take the water from the pasture. You said, and the engineers, as I said, I spoke to the engineer at the time who was in charge of drainage. He's saying that now the pasture is supposed to be a retention place for water. How do you have a retention place for water when you have it sloped down to the CML? Because it was graded that way. Anybody come to the pasture will know that it goes from up by the houses. It's graded down to the slope, down to the towards the road. Down. So I don't see how it don't retain any water in the pasture. But I'm not here to argue or to think. I just telling you as I see it because I've been here, and it don't retain any water. So all the water goes into the one that was supposed to be going from the road. I tell you that, as I said, it used to be one where they come and they said they're taking it from the road. I spoke to when it was being done to Mr. Bar. But you know me, I went to Coach Bar and I didn't go to
behave yourself. Behave yourself.
I didn't go, I'm not an engineer.
Behave yourself.
I'm not an engineer. The engineer said that's how it should be.
No, to be fair. That's what I just do.
And I'm not here to
I fully
make anything. I'm trying just to let you know what I know.
Agreed. And I think when Jason started the presentation, you would have noticed that 2 wells on the plaster effectively were collapsed and not functioning. As we go through this thing systematically to ensure that, one, we repair wells that have been broken for some time, that we would anticipate that we will continue to monitor, and we will determine obviously what needs to be done. And I think it's important that in the same way that when you saw the box drain put in across the road as opposed to PVC pipe that was effectively going across the road that was blocked. And there are a number of wells, you will notice that there are a number of wells in the communities that have these PVC pipes right across the road that have effectively become blocked and no longer taking any water. And therefore, you will see that as we move forward, there's going to be cleaning, yes, but improving the access to the wells will become a priority in terms of being.
Ryan, if I may join you, Jason, you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to thank you and your team for a fantastic job. I live at Watton and I know that the wells have been clean. I've seen the men doing some really good work. And I'm wondering too if we can do something, maybe take a little step backwards and enforce the cleaning up of our surroundings, because a lot of times that's what's causing the flooding. I heard Ryan mention about the bag with the cuttings from the grass. But I know either the year before in May when we had flooding around the circle, two of the boys took you know, with the master went under the water and removed 2 large garbage bags, and in 5 minutes, the circle was empty of water. So if the debris is coming off the main road, as Marlon suggested, maybe we need to, as a nation, as a community, to look at how we keep our surroundings and not just discard, just throw things in the backyard, and then when the water comes, it blocks everything. So maybe the Ministry of Health too can play a part by enforcing and make sure that people dispose of things properly and keep the place clean. But I want to thank you for your job. I see the men when they come around. I see the truck going out with the muck from the wells, and I am sure that with this hurricane season, outside the strong, you know, the winds and the other natural elements, that we're going to be okay. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope, I certainly thank you for that, and I hope that that is okay. But what we, and I thank you for reinforcing the point of encouraging people to take care of their surroundings, because it is only when people do that that we actually reduce the risk of any damage that will pose to residents in the community. And therefore, someone made mention, Jason, of engaging the various neighborhood watchers across the constituency in order to help galvanize and respond in this way. Because the truth is, in those small groupings across the different communities in the constituency, then we can, I think we can do some good work, at least to be able to clear the path to the wells. And hopefully then, once we can get through the program of the cleaning and any other significant repair, then I know that with the, based on what you've shown me, Jason, I know that there are probably more than 200-300 wells in the constituency. And certainly in that Kingston, Newton, Durance area, there is a heavy concentration of them. And so therefore, we want to ensure that we capture as much water as possible, as far away from the low-lying areas as possible. And Marlon, I think the point you made about coming off of Kingston Main Road, where Montrose is coming back from that side, because I do know that a lot of water comes down from that way. It actually, and obviously because where you are is lower than the main road by Montrose. And then three things happen at that point. Obviously, the water is coming from the pasture behind you, where the well is. When it passes the supermarket, if you like, some comes by you, some goes down through the gap on the right hand side with the pan that sell the bread. Some goes down through there by Silver Hill, and then the rest of the water rushes and goes all the way down by the Aberdeen Center and straight down Oistins. Is where a lot of that water goes. So we have to look on the other side to see obviously what can be done, and you know that some work was done on the other side of by the water playing field. There was a few years ago when they did the road. Obviously, the road is actually now higher than where you are, and that may have contributed to that, and it's something that we will have to determine what would be the best response with respect to that. So because all the water that goes down through the gap from where the guy sells the bread ends up down in Caneville there on the pasture. So the reality is that we have to find a way to ensure that we can catch water either coming along Kingston Main Road from that side, whilst we do the same from Kingston Lodge Road, Best Road side area, that then comes, adds more water to where you are, that ends up in from Chatsworth Circle. So we'll try to, as I say, systematically just assess. And all I will say is that once we can make those assessments, now that the wells have been repaired, those 2 wells have been repaired, then it means that we should be, in theory, able to catch more water. And if we're catching more water and divert it to the wells, then it means then that the potential for flooding in your area should be reduced. And we want to do this same type of work and analysis across the entire constituency, because as I said, there are other areas where they have some localized flooding by specific wells, and therefore we want to be able to in a position to remedy those. So we'll, as I said, there's work to be done, and we'll continue to engage all of you and encourage and ask that you encourage others to help keep the place clean in terms of the gutters and the drains, so that we can all sleep a little easier if and when an event or tropical storm or something passes that happens to dump a significant amount of water. And as I said, we really do want to catch the water. That's really the main aim. We want to catch the water so we can get it into the aquifers, so that we can have access to water rather than all of it running in the sea. Okay? Well, thanks for that. Thanks, Pat. If there are no other questions, we've been on for 2 hours and 15 minutes now, and I really do hope that we are we continue to prepare. Let me thank Jason. I know Jason is not feeling well, but let me thank him for soldiering on this afternoon and being able to present the information. And as I said, it's work in progress. I want to encourage all of you to volunteer. Just very quickly, I know that we've made some presentation of the radios to the DEO, and I know that you guys are working to build up the radio capacity across the constituency. If there are any persons who are interested in not just joining the DEO, but certainly have any experience in terms of handling radio communications, and whilst you may know somebody who has some of that experience, who can come and help build up the capacity in as far as the constituency is concerned, so that we can communicate in the event that there's an outage, not just with ourselves, but certainly communicate national emergency operations center, and therefore I urge persons who may have that expertise, and obviously ask persons to get exposed to the training, because I think it's important that we all are exposed and we see what our strengths are with respect to whatever the DEOs may be able to expose people to. So let me thank you all for joining the meeting. I hope that you've been able to get some information that's been insightful, useful. We will continue to work with, as Jason said, residents in the constituency. And Jason, let me just for the record, Jason is always on my back to get the people to respond. I'm notwithstanding my own schedule. I been as hard as I can push them. Of course, they always tell me that they want money, and that is something that I work hard to try to find to ensure that we can respond to the infrastructure needs of the country. So we will continue to do the work, and what I ask of you is just to participate in ensuring that you can keep on top of the very local issues, the things that you can help with, and ask all of you to consider joining the DEO and get actively involved. We can, I know that we all have the interests of the community at heart, and therefore it's something that I feel very strongly that we should encourage the participation, and there are a lot of skills that people can bring to bear, and I think it's something that could easily work wonders in the context of building resilience in Christchurch, Central, across the country. So that being said, let me thank everybody. Thanks again, Jason. Thanks, Salvin, thanks all of you for participating. Jason's telephone number, just for the last, is 825-4346. The email for the DEO is .com. You all know how to reach me. 2510811 is my WhatsApp, and or my telephone number, not just WhatsApp, my telephone number. The office email is office@christchurchecentral.com. That's office@chchecentral.com. So feel free to reach out to myself, to Jason. We will be continuing the engagement community by community, and we hope to be able to report further progress in the very near future as we seek to build resilience across the constituency and to help with the national strategy for having community risk reduction become a part of the lives of ordinary Barbadians. So thanks again. Good evening. Please be safe. Continue to follow the COVID-19 protocols. I know that we have opened up and things are almost back to what seems to be the normal. But so long as there are people with COVID on the island, of which there's still 4 persons, I urge all of you to continue to follow the public health protocols because it is important that we get as many people back to work as quickly as possible so that we can all find a way to ensure that each brother and sister's keeper. So thank you. Good evening. God bless you. Good night.
Thank you.
Night.